This is Garden Variety, a horticulture podcast from Iowa Public Radio and Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. I'm Dani Gehr in for Charity Nebbe. There are a lot of gardens in my neighborhood that I admire, but one in particular I really love to walk past, and it is filled with native plants. And I almost want to ring their doorbell and thank them for their service, for improving my walks so much. But when thinking about adding natives to your garden, it could be hard to know where to start. Iowa State University horticulturist Ray Kruse has gone through that trial and error for you, and Ray joins me now. Hey, Ray.
Hi, Dani. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Oh, just spectacular.
Well, let's start by getting on the same page. How do you define native plants and nativars?
Sure. So I feel that this is such a debated topic. So I'm going to talk about the angle that I come at it from. So for our garden at our place, for me, native is basically native to North America. So that's my definition of native. Like over the past, hundreds of years, the lines as to where plants used to exist and now exist can vary. And so to me, like North America is pretty good if you wanna ask me. So that's my definition of a native plant. And then a nativar is a plant that is if you want to say cloned and is cloned for specific values. So, like there's many different types of switchgrass, and those are cloned because some are short, some are tall, and when you clone them, you can copy those desired characteristics. So to me, that's a nativar, native plant that we value for its horticultural characteristics, and we clone them. So,
well, tell me about your native plant garden. Where did it start, and what does it look like now?
Yeah. So when I was in grad school, I went to grad school at Iowa State, graduated in 2015. I had no idea that native plants was going to be something that I was going to dive into. And then I met my wife, and then we were going to prairie conferences, and we were engaging with other people in native plant community and the prairie community. And I still had no idea that I was going to be this interested in native plants and having a garden. I've had a perennial garden growing up, but crossing the two was just never something I envisioned. And then now that my wife and I, we have a farm, and I have this wonderful position at the Dubuque County Extension Office, and we've been able to launch a program called Mowing to Monarchs. That program, which helps folks plant native plants in their backyard, has really gotten me to really take a deep dive into this and really, if you want to say, get nerdy with them. So,
and what have you had success with this year?
Sure. So I've had an interest in grasses, if you want to say. And so I started collecting those, if you want to say, to start with. And those to me have pretty much been pretty foolproof ever since the get-go. So one of my favorite grasses that always does well is something called northwood and switchgrass. It's very popular in garden centers. And that's just been a fun one. So that's one that's been doing really well for me. Another one that's been doing really well, and depends upon what size of garden you got, is cup plant. So we planted that 2 years ago, and boy, that has just taken off like crazy this year. It just looks gorgeous. The plant leaves are huge. We got these little puddles of water with all the rain that we're getting here in Dubuque recently. We got tons and tons of insects and birds that are visiting that for water. So it's been kind of cool to see those two plants specifically be really successful this year. So,
yeah, what hasn't lived up to expectations?
So I really love asters. And so one of my favorite asters is New England asters. And so I've got two different kinds that are dwarfs. One's called Grape Crush, and another's called Purple Dome. And this year they look a little sad. So I don't know if it's the intense rains that we've got up here in Dubuque, or Dubuque County rather, that's causing some issues. They've got a little bit of disease at the base of the plant, which isn't uncommon, but I feel like it's uncommon for this early in the year. So those are
Mhm.
looking a little tough, even though they're one of my favorite plants.
How much time do you usually give a plant that's not quite hitting those expectations?
Oh gosh, that's a complicated question. So if it's like these New England asters, they're probably going to stay there unless they just don't bloom. But other plants that I have, if there's aggressive spreaders, so like we had, and this wasn't a native plant, but it was we call it like European windflower. It was snowdrop anemone, and we got it thinking it was a native, planted it, and we're doing some more research. Once we got it planted, we're like, oh, I guess that's actually a European, type of plant. But we're like, great, we're not going to hold it against the plant. But after 2 years of growing that and some very successful spreading by that plant, I'm like, you know what, that just can't be here anymore. It's just going to go crazy. So for 2 years after that, we're like, nope, nope, that one's got to go. So that one made room this year for new plants, we'll say. So
And with those aggressive spreaders, do you try and avoid them, or do you have advice for how to keep that spreading in check?
sure. So if it's a seed spreader, I'm a little more inclined to keep it because once the flowers dry out and have their glory, if you want to say, like you can remove them and control the spreading a lot easier. Like for example, I have some rattlesnake master, and I had no idea that was going to spread as bad as it does if you don't remove the little balls on top, which are their flowers. So yeah, if you just cut those off, you save a lot of headaches. But like this European windflower that we had, that spread by roots, and that was very aggressive. And so when that's happening, I'm like, nope, that's got to go. So that's kind of my if it's spreading by roots, real aggressively, I'm more inclined to take it out, if you want to
Mm.
say. So
Now, there are a lot of environmental benefits with native plants. There's also, they require less water, less fertilizer. But what can people expect as far as maintenance? I understand that that doesn't mean you won't have a lot of work to do in your native garden.
sure, sure. So I like to view it as something as what you put in is what you get out. Um, and there's also other environmental factors that fact that's a very big question to answer. I'm sorry. So yeah, if you have a lot of bad weeds that are aggressive in your environment, such as like quackgrass or Canadian thistle, and you just plant some plants in there that you're like, you know what, I'm just going to walk away and let that do its thing, those really aggressive weeds are probably going to take over. And if you don't do any maintenance with it, so that's going to be something that you're going to have to revisit and spend a lot of time revamping when the time comes, even though you had these long spans of time where you didn't do anything. So there's that. For me, I'm out there weekly, and I originally planned this garden not to be that way, but here I am, like having a lot of interest in it, and just having so much fun observing them that I'm out there weekly where I'm like, that's got to get cut back, or we got to tuck a little bit more mulch in because we have some bare spots in the mulch or something like that. We don't want weeds. So I think that's a very open-ended question, but that's what I'm out there doing is a weekly round of care, if you want to say. But it is just one bed for me that I have, that I'm taking care of. So that's kind
Mhm.
of my what do you want to say, way of controlling that impulse, if you want to
Yeah.
say.
When you are out there checking out your garden, what other observations are you trying to make?
Sure. So I'm really fond of plants that have a long, if you want to say, a life and don't require that annual replant in this prairie garden, if you want to say. So I'm kind of evaluating like how are they growing and things like that. I have this type of a little blue stem that I purchased last year, and I know it was overwintered in the pot at the nursery that I bought it from. So I knew that, and it was already a little stunted, but I planted it last fall, never took off, and now it's back this spring, which I'm glad it made it through the winter, but it is just not taken off. So even though I'm not really worried about it spreading badly, I just don't think it's going to last long term. So I'm just constantly evaluating that. I'm also looking for disease. So something that has really surprised me is I have these false sunflowers, and they seem really bulletproof throughout the summer. Like they have good shape, good form, everything like that. But just something odd that's happened with them is over the course of like 2 or 3 days, they'll just up and die. And I don't know whether it's a disease that they got or what, but I had that happen to a fall sunflower I purchased from a nursery last year, and it was just gorgeous. And then by the end of July, I just noticed it wilting one day, and then 2 days later, it was completely toast. And I was like, well,
Mm.
that was quick. So yeah, I'm looking for those things. When I'm inside the house, because I have our perennial garden, our prairie garden, right outside of our house, outside of our picture window. So we look at it at every meal we eat at the kitchen table. And so we see a fair number of birds, and that's been exciting. This year I've seen my first oriole. So that's been cool. And this year we have a fair number of goldfinches hanging around too. So
So you don't run out of stuff to observe in the garden.
no, no. And I never thought that I would see as many benefits to this as what I do, but a lot of folks have their landscaping up against the walls of their house or the foundation. And our house is not the way our house sits on the landscape. It's not really viewable from the road, or when you drive up to our garage to enter the front door, you can't really see much of the landscaping. And so I was like, well, why have that if I just can't enjoy it? So we don't really have any landscaping, at the base of our house, and we just put the perennial bed out in the center of the grass. And so, like, when we sit down, like I said, we eat a meal or something like that, we're always looking outside at that garden and what's going on next, even in the middle of winter. And it's been exciting. The beard tongues, they have this kind of evergreen look to them in the deep of winter. So that's fun to observe, where there's these random plants that just have life to them when everything else is barren. So, yeah.
Iowa State University horticulturist Ray Kruse. For more gardening information and tips, please subscribe to our garden variety newsletter. Find out more at iowapublicradio.org/garden. I'm Dani Gehr.
Garden Variety is a production of Iowa Public Radio and Iowa State University Extension. It's produced by me, Erin Stile, Caitlin Troutman, and the Iowa Public Radio talk show team. For more garden goodness, please subscribe to our Garden Variety newsletter. Just go to iowapublicradio.org/garden. I'm Charity Nebbe. See you next time.